Every Tuesday at precisely 10:17 a.m., the grocery store clerk helps the blind woman shop every week, unaware she's a best-selling author writing a book about him. Some might call it coincidence that Elijah Mason's break always falls at this exact time, but Eleanor Wright knows better. In her world of perpetual darkness, patterns and timing are everything. The automatic doors at Hartwell's Market whisper open, releasing a rush of temperature-controlled air into the crisp autumn morning. Eleanor stands just beyond the threshold, her white cane tapping tentatively against the rubber mat. She wears a navy peacoat buttoned to her throat, her silver hair swept into a neat bun, dark glasses hiding eyes that haven't seen light in nearly 20 years. Inside, Elijah glances at the ancient wall clock above the customer service desk, 10:16 a.m. He quickly unties his green apron, hangs it on the hook beside the employee break room, and makes his way to the front of the store. At 26, he moves with the slight stoop of someone who has spent too many years making himself smaller, less noticeable. His manager, Frank, gives him a knowing nod as he passes. "Your Tuesday lady's right on time," Frank says with the hint of a smile. Elijah's cheeks warm slightly. "She has a name, you know. It's Eleanor." The clock ticks to 10:17 as Elijah reaches the entrance. There's something about the precision of Eleanor's arrivals that both comforts and intrigues him. In a life where so little feels certain, her Tuesday morning appearances have become something he can count on. "Good morning, Eleanor," he calls, his voice carrying across the small foyer. She turns toward the sound, a smile transforming her face. "Elijah, right on time as always." He notices she's clutching something against her chest, a leather-bound notebook, its edges worn soft with use. "It wasn't there last week. New accessory today?" he asks, reaching for the shopping cart he'd already wiped down and prepared for her. Eleanor's fingers tighten around the notebook. "Just some thoughts I'm collecting. Nothing terribly interesting." She slides it into her large handbag with practiced ease. "Shall we begin with the produce section? I'm thinking of making vegetable soup this week." What Eleanor doesn't say is that the notebook contains 17 pages of observations about the young man now guiding her through the automatic doors. His gentle voice with its barely perceptible stutter when he gets excited about a new product. The careful way he describes colors to her as if painting pictures with words. The patience in his step as he matches his pace to hers. Her publishers are expecting a draft of her next novel in 3 months. After 5 bestsellers and a reputation for crafting characters of extraordinary depth, Eleanor Wright has found herself inexplicably drawn to the quiet grocery clerk who has no idea he's been immortalized in her words. For Elijah, Tuesdays with Eleanor are the highlight of his otherwise monotonous week. The other days blur together in a haze of stocking shelves, scanning items and forcing smiles for impatient customers. But Tuesdays have color. "The tomatoes look particularly good today," he says, guiding her hand to hover just above a display of vibrant red fruits. "Deep red, not too soft? Perfect for soup." Eleanor's fingers move with practiced precision, gently testing the firmness of each tomato before selecting 3. "Tell me something, Elijah. If you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you choose?" The question catches him off guard. Their conversations usually revolve around food, occasionally the weather. Never dreams, never possibilities. He starts, then stops, reaching for a basket of onions to buy himself time. "No one's ever asked me that before." Eleanor turns her face toward him, and though she can't see him, Elijah feels oddly exposed, as if those hidden eyes can perceive far more than his appearance. "Perhaps it's time someone did," she says softly. Later, alone in her book-lined study, Eleanor runs her fingers over the raised dots of her Braille keyboard, translating their shared morning into prose. He carries sadness like an old friend, not one he particularly enjoys, but one he's grown accustomed to having around. When he laughs, there's a moment of surprise in it, as if the sound escaped before he could contain it. "I wonder what happened to teach a young man that joy should be rationed, happiness guarded." There are stories in his silences that speak louder than words. She pauses, fingertips hovering over the keys. Is it ethical, this secret cataloging of another person's life? But there's something about Elijah that calls to her, a buried light she recognizes, having once lost her own. 7 miles across town, in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, Elijah sits at his kitchen table eating microwaved leftovers. The constant vibration of washing machines below provides a familiar background hum. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet from a local pizza place, is a dog-eared photograph. a young woman with Elijah's same hazel eyes, her arms slung around his teenage shoulders. Her smile wide and unguarded in a way his hasn't been for years. He thinks about Eleanor's question and the answer he couldn't give. The truth is, he can't imagine being anywhere else. Not because Hartwell's Market and this rumbling apartment are his dream, but because dreams require the capacity to see beyond what is. And somewhere along the way, Elijah had stopped looking up. The following Tuesday brings rain, fat, insistent drops that drum against the store's wide windows and send customers hurrying through the doors with collars turned up and umbrellas dripping. Elijah checks the clock, 10:13 a.m. He feels an unfamiliar flutter of anxiety. Eleanor doesn't drive. She walks the 4 blocks from her home to the store every Tuesday. Would she venture out in this downpour? At 10:21, she hasn't arrived, and the flutter becomes a knot. Frank notices him hovering near the entrance. "Maybe your Tuesday lady's taking a rain check," he says, chuckling at his own pun. Elijah is about to reluctantly return to restocking when the doors slide open. Eleanor stands there, her coat darkened with rain, her white cane tapping a small puddle forming at her feet. But it's her face that catches his breath. She's smiling, radiant almost, her cheeks flushed from the cool rain. "I'm late," she announces, sounding delighted rather than apologetic. "I had to feel the rain on my face for a while." "Do you know how many different ways rain can sound, Elijah? On leaves, on rooftops, on skin?" He rushes to her side with paper towels from the dispenser near the carts. "You're soaked through," he says, concern evident in his voice. "You could catch cold." Eleanor laughs, a clear, bell-like sound that turns heads in the nearby checkout lines. Some experiences are worth a little discomfort. She reaches for his arm with unerring accuracy. "Now, shall we continue our conversation from last week? You never told me where you'd choose to be." As they move through the store, Elijah finds himself admitting what he's never told anyone. "I'd be on a train." Not going anywhere specific, just moving, watching the world change outside the window. "My sister and I used to talk about taking a cross-country trip someday." Eleanor selects a box of pasta, runs her fingers over the shape described on the package. "Used to?" The question hangs between them, heavy with implication. "She died. Car accident. 5 years ago." The words come out clipped, rehearsed from too many tellings to well-meaning acquaintances. Eleanor's hand finds his forearm, rests there with a gentle pressure. She doesn't say she's sorry, doesn't ask for details. Instead, she says, "Tell me one perfect memory you have with her." No one has ever asked him that either. That night, Eleanor's fingers fly across her keyboard with unusual urgency. Loss shapes us like water-shaped stone, not all at once, but in a gradual wearing away that changes our very essence. Yet beneath the hollow spaces carved by absence, the core remains. I see it in him, that untouched center, preserving what matters most, the capacity to be kind despite having every reason not to be. Across town, Elijah dreams of trains and his sister's laugh, and for the first time in years, he wakes without the familiar weight of grief pressing against his chest. The following Tuesday, Elijah brings Eleanor a gift, a small umbrella that fits perfectly in her handbag. "Just in case," he says, guiding her hand to the compact handle, showing her how it expands with the press of a button. "How thoughtful," she murmurs, but there's a slight furrow to her brow. "Is something wrong?" he asks. Eleanor hesitates. "I've been thinking about our conversations, Elijah. You know so much about me, my preference for sourdough over whole wheat, my dislike of cilantro, but I've realized you know nothing substantive about my life beyond these grocery trips." He guides her toward the dairy section, considering her words. "I know you live alone. You make soup on Tuesdays and read—" He catches himself. "Listen to books on Sunday afternoons. You prefer the texture of natural fibers and the smell of rain." Eleanor's expression softens. "You've been paying attention." "It's easy to pay attention to things that matter," he says simply. She turns her face away, but not before he catches the slight tremble of her lips. "I used to be a professor of literature," she offers, "before I lost my sight." It's the first personal detail she's volunteered about her life before blindness, and Elijah recognizes the gift it is. "What happened?" he asks, then immediately backpedals. "I'm sorry, that's too personal." "Degenerative condition. Progressive. I had time to prepare, unlike many who lose their sight suddenly. I learned Braille, adapted my home, said goodbye to certain pleasures like watching sunsets." She pauses as they reach the refrigerated section. "But I found new ones. Different textures, deeper listening. And writing, I never stopped writing." Elijah selects a carton of eggs, placing it carefully in the cart. "What do you write?" A small, mysterious smile plays at the corners of Eleanor's mouth. Stories about people who think they're ordinary but are actually quite extraordinary. Later that day, Eleanor sits in her garden, feeling the late afternoon sun warm on her face. Her assistant, Margot, reads aloud from the latest reviews of Eleanor's most recent novel. Wright has an uncanny ability to capture the nuanced depths of the human experience, Margot reads. Her characters feel so authentic. One wonders if they might be walking among us, unaware they've been immortalized in her pages. Eleanor smiles. If they only knew. There's also an email from your publisher. Margot continues. They're anxious for an update on the new manuscript. They want to know if you're still on track for the deadline. Eleanor runs her fingers over the raised dots on the page beside her, tracing the words she'd written about Elijah that morning. Tell them it's coming along beautifully. This one is different from anything I've written before. Different how? Margot asks, curiosity evident in her voice. Eleanor considers the question. My previous works were crafted from imagination and observation. This one is being written from a place of genuine connection. The main character isn't just inspired by someone real, he's teaching me something about life with every interaction. This grocery clerk must be quite something, Margot says with a hint of skepticism. He has no idea who I am, Margot. Do you know how rare that is? To be known simply as yourself, without the weight of reputation or expectation? Eleanor's voice softens. He sees me, not the blind woman, not the famous author, just Eleanor. As autumn deepens into winter, the Tuesday ritual continues. Eleanor asks questions that no one else thinks to ask. Elijah answers with increasing openness. They navigate the aisles of Hartwell's Market in a dance of growing familiarity. What would you do if you weren't working here? She asks one snowy December morning. Elijah considers while selecting a perfectly ripe avocado for her inspection. I was studying architecture before things changed. I liked the idea of creating spaces that could make people feel something. Eleanor nods as if this explains everything she's observed about him. Spaces tell stories. They hold memories. They shape how we interact with the world and each other. Exactly, he says, surprised and pleased by her understanding. Though I suppose that sounds silly coming from someone who stocks shelves for a living. There's honor in any work done with care, Eleanor replies firmly. And besides, we're rarely just one thing in this life. The Tuesday before Christmas, Elijah notices Eleanor seems distracted, her responses delayed, her questions fewer. As they approach the checkout, he finally asks, "Is everything all right?" She clutches her ever-present notebook a little tighter. My publisher has called an unexpected meeting. Tomorrow, about my current project. That sounds important, Elijah says, feeling oddly disappointed that her mind is elsewhere. It is. This book ... She hesitates. It matters more to me than the others. I'm nervous about sharing it, even in its unfinished state. Without thinking, he places his hand over hers. They'd be fools not to see its value. Eleanor's face tilts up toward him, surprise evident in her expression. Thank you, Elijah. Your faith means more than you know. That night, a heavy snow begins to fall over the city. By morning, schools are closed, roads are treacherous, and Hartwell's Market opens 2 hours late. Elijah volunteers to come in early to help clear the walkways. He's shoveling the last section of sidewalk when a taxi pulls up, and Eleanor emerges, navigating carefully with her cane through the freshly cleared path. "Eleanor?" he calls, leaning his shovel against the building. "What are you doing here?" It's Wednesday, and the conditions are terrible. She turns toward his voice, her face pale against her dark coat. "Elijah, thank goodness you're here. My meeting was canceled due to the weather and She hesitates. "This will sound strange, but I needed to speak with you." Something in her tone sends a ripple of concern through him. "Let's get you inside. You're freezing." The store is nearly empty, the storm having kept most customers home. Elijah leads Eleanor to the small cafe in the corner of the market, ordering 2 hot chocolates from the barista who watches them curiously. "What's going on?" he asks when they're seated at a small table, the steaming cups between them. Eleanor's hands tremble slightly as she removes her gloves. "I haven't been entirely honest with you, Elijah." His stomach tightens. "About what?" "About who I am." She draws a deep breath. "My name is Eleanor Wright. I'm an author. I've published 5 novels, and I'm currently writing my 6th. She pauses. "It's about a grocery store clerk with an extraordinary capacity for kindness." The words hang in the space between them. Elijah stares at her, processing what she's said. "You're writing about me?" All these questions, these conversations, they were research? Eleanor winces at the hurt evident in his voice. "It began that way," she admits quietly. "I was intrigued by you from our first interaction, but it became something else entirely. The questions, the conversations, they were genuine. My interest in you is genuine." Elijah sits back, a coldness settling in his chest that has nothing to do with the snow outside. "Does everyone in your life become material? Is that how this works?" "No," Eleanor says firmly. "Never like this. I've always created characters from fragments of observations, bits and pieces of many different people. But you..." She reaches for her bag, withdraws the leather notebook, and slides it across the table. "You changed everything." Elijah looks down at the notebook, then back at her. "I can't read this." "I know. That's why I've asked Margot, my assistant, to transcribe portions of it." She produces a sealed envelope from her coat pocket. "This contains the first 3 chapters. I'd like you to read them, to understand what I've written and why." He takes the envelope reluctantly. "And if I don't like what I read?" Eleanor's expression is solemn. "Then the manuscript gets shelved. No questions asked. Your story belongs to you, Elijah." "I should have asked permission from the beginning." That evening, Elijah sits in his apartment, the envelope unopened on his kitchen table. The betrayal stings in ways he hadn't expected. For months, he'd looked forward to Tuesdays as the one bright spot in his routine existence. To learn it was all material for a book, it hollows him out. He finally tears open the envelope as midnight approaches, extracting several printed pages. The title page reads, "Seeing Through Darkness," by Eleanor Wright. Despite his anger, curiosity pulls him into the first chapter. He expects to find himself dissected, his life reduced to quaint observations about the sad grocery clerk. What he finds instead takes his breath away. The novel opens not with him, but with Eleanor, or rather a fictionalized version of her. It describes her journey through progressive blindness, the terror of watching the world dim day by day, the grief of saying goodbye to faces she loved, colors she cherished. It reveals her isolation, her struggle to redefine herself when everything that had anchored her identity was gone. And then, on page 17, the character based on him appears. Not as a tragic figure or a simple plot device, but as a person of depth and complexity, someone carrying his own invisible burdens. Someone who, without realizing it, becomes a thread of connection back to a world the protagonist feared lost forever. By the time he finishes the 3rd chapter, tears stream silently down Elijah's face. The writing is exquisite, but more than that, it's truthful. Not just about him, but about connection, about the quiet ways people save each other without ever intending to. The next Tuesday, Eleanor arrives at the store at her usual time, uncertain what reception awaits her. She stands just inside the entrance, listening intently for the familiar footsteps. "You're here." Elijah's voice comes from beside her, startling her slightly. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she admits softly. "I read the chapters," he says, his voice carefully neutral. Eleanor steels herself. And I think it's the most honest thing I've ever read." He pauses, and she can hear him shifting his weight. "You made me see myself differently. Not just what I do here, but who I am." "Who you are is remarkable, Elijah," Eleanor says. "I only put into words what was already there." A gentle touch on her arm, his hand finding hers. "I have questions. About your books, about what happens next in the story." Relief washes over her. "Does this mean you're giving me permission to continue?" "It means," he says, placing her hand in the crook of his arm as they begin their familiar journey through the store, "that I'd like to be part of the process from now on. If the story is partly mine, I'd like to help tell it." Spring arrives with a flurry of changes. Eleanor's publisher has set a release date for Seeing Through Darkness. Advanced reviews call it her most powerful work yet, and Elijah, after much encouragement from Eleanor, has enrolled in night classes to finish his architecture degree. Their Tuesday shopping ritual continues, but with a difference. Now, after completing their grocery run, they sit in the cafe corner of the market, Eleanor's recorder between them, collaborating on the final chapters of the novel. "You know, when this is published, people will figure out where I work," Elijah says one afternoon as they discuss a particularly revealing scene. "Things might change." Eleanor nods thoughtfully. "I've considered that. We can change details if you're concerned about privacy." "It's not that," he says slowly. "It's just, I've spent so long being invisible. The idea of being seen, really seen, is terrifying." "And exhilarating?" she suggests gently. A small smile tugs at his lips. "Maybe a little." On a warm Tuesday in late May, exactly 1 year after their first meeting, Eleanor arrives at Hartwell's Market with Margot accompanying her. Elijah meets them at the entrance, surprise evident in his voice. "2 for the price of 1 today?" he jokes, though there's a note of uncertainty beneath the humor. Eleanor smiles. "Elijah, I'd like you to meet Margot officially. She's been my eyes on paper for many years now." Margot extends her hand. "It's nice to finally meet you properly. I feel like I know you already." "Likewise," Elijah says, shaking her hand. "Though I suspect you know far more about me than I do about you. That's actually why we're here." Eleanor interjects. "I have something for you. Or rather, we do." She nods to Margot, who produces a package wrapped in simple brown paper. Elijah takes it, feeling the weight and shape of what can only be a book. "Is this the first printed copy?" Eleanor confirms. "It won't be in stores for another month, but I wanted you to be the first to hold it." His hands tremble slightly as he unwraps the package. The cover is striking, a grocery aisle stretching into soft focus, a play of light and shadow suggesting 2 figures moving toward each other from opposite ends. The title, "Seeing Through Darkness," arches across the top in elegant typography, and beneath it, by Eleanor Wright, with contributions from Elijah Mason. "You put my name on it," he whispers, his voice thick. "It was always our story," Eleanor says simply. "From the moment you first guided me through these aisles." That evening, Eleanor hosts a small dinner at her home, just the 3 of them, Eleanor, Elijah, and Margot. As they sit in her garden, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air, Elijah reads aloud from the book's dedication page. "To those who believe they are invisible, you are seen. To those navigating darkness, light finds unexpected ways to reach you. And to the grocery clerk who taught me that true sight has nothing to do with eyes, thank you for helping me find my way back to the world." He looks up to find Eleanor smiling, her face turned toward the fading warmth of the setting sun. "When I first lost my sight," she says softly, "I thought I was losing everything that mattered. It took me years to understand that what I gained was a different way of seeing, one that perceives what often remains invisible to others. Like the extraordinary in the ordinary," Elijah offers. "Exactly." She reaches across the table and he meets her hand halfway. Like a grocery clerk who thinks he's just helping an old blind woman shop, when in reality, he's teaching her how to live again. 6 months later, Seeing Through Darkness has climbed to the top of the bestseller lists. Elijah still works at Hartwell's Market, though now only part-time as he completes his degree. Customers occasionally recognize his name from the book jacket, asking for autographs alongside their receipts, which both embarrasses and secretly pleases him. Eleanor continues to arrive every Tuesday at 10:17 a.m., though now their shopping trips often extend to lunch, sometimes dinner. They've begun collaborating on a new project, a children's book about seeing the world through different senses. On a crisp autumn morning, exactly like the one when their story began, Elijah meets Eleanor at the store entrance. But instead of guiding her inside, he asks, "Do you trust me?" "Completely," she answers without hesitation. "Then come with me. There's somewhere else I'd like to go today." He leads her to his car, helps her into the passenger seat, and drives them to the train station. As they settle into their seats on the westbound train, Eleanor's expression is curious. "Where are we going?" she asks. Elijah takes her hand, placing a small velvet box in her palm. "On a journey, just like we talked about that rainy day almost 2 years ago." Eleanor's fingers explore the box, finding the hinge, opening it to discover the simple ring inside. Her breath catches. "Elijah, before I met you, I was just existing," he says quietly, "moving through days without really living them. You taught me to see possibilities again, to dream again." He pauses, gathering courage. "I don't know where this train is going today. I bought tickets for the furthest stop on the line. But I do know I want to spend the rest of my life exploring wherever we end up, together." Tears spill from beneath Eleanor's dark glasses as she reaches for his face, her fingertips gently mapping his smile. "Yes," she whispers. "To all of it, yes." As the train pulls away from the station, carrying them toward an unwritten future, Eleanor leans her head against Elijah's shoulder. "You know what this means, don't you?" she asks. "What?" Her smile is radiant. "We're going to need a new title for our next book." Outside the window, the world rushes by in a blur of autumn colors neither of them needs to see to appreciate. The beauty is in the journey itself, in the quiet miracle of 2 souls who found each other in the most ordinary of places and discovered something extraordinary, that sometimes the greatest stories begin in the simplest moments, like a grocery store clerk helping a blind woman shop every week, unaware that in doing so, he was writing his own happy ending.